Tonight, Kennedy shows off his fish knowledge.
Look up the lungfish. It basically turns itself into mud.
Steve talks Earth patch notes.
So Lumber took a massive nerf in Earth 1.5.
And I get a few octaves higher. Did this man just equate abortion with eugenics?
Why hello my fellow apes, I hope you are well. Welcome back to what is the 4th episode of Lowfruit. It's going, it's going great, I think.
It's going brilliant. But,
Brilliant, yeah.
I will say, actually, on the front of how well it's going, we met the goal that Steve set for us last month, which was to do one a month, every month, for the rest of December.
You're going to be getting at least one of these videos per month for the rest of the year. Man of my word, man. Yeah. Man of my word.
Setting targets that we can achieve. That's what we like to do here.
Yes, and you know what? We'll make this goal for 2022 as well, since we did so well on 2021. Meeting it. Yeah. Now, last month we also tackled Matt Powell, okay? Yep. The man, the gift that just keeps on giving.
People say, how do you always win the debates?
No, they don't.
No.
And we asked you to come up with a couple of names for his technique, let's say, of citing a source that debunks himself. And you came up with some doozies.
Yeah, like absolutely
beautiful,
brilliant effort from all of you. There were so many good ones in the comment section there, but we had to pick out our favourites. And what we'd actually like for you to do is to vote on which one that we'll use going forth from here. Yeah. So, link to the poll is going to be in the comment section below. But we've got Powell picking, the Trojan source, the Ouroboros fallacy, the Powell proof, and the foot shot fallacy. It's just brilliant ones all round.
It really is. And I, just on the topic of comments, we've really appreciated reading them. Thanks for being with us since the beginning. You know, this show is still young, and like your enthusiasm for it, the fact that a lot of you seem to be enjoying the humour, like it means a lot to us. So thank you very, very much. Anyway, we've got this episode now where we're dealing with, let's see, it is Kennedy Hall from the Fatima Centre. What? What is that intro for an intro? That is.
We've been doing it wrong.
It's his stare. It's his stare. That was beautiful.
I think we need an intro that good.
New intro. Right.
We're going to do it again. Right. Hang on. We'll start our intro again.
Yeah. We're going to take his music as well. You ready?
We're going to destroy evolution in 5 key points.
Best of luck with that one, mate. Go on.
You've only got to beat Matt Powell. That's all you got to beat to not be our worst video.
To not be our worst video. Yeah, that is our low bar so far.
Let's have a go.
But also just debunking the myths about evolutionary theory from just a strictly scientific perspective. It's not that hard to do.
Oh, wow. So it's not that hard to do then?
Nah, it's easy, mate. It's easy. Creationists have tried and failed to debunk evolution just countless times, right? And as we know, if you want to debunk something, the first step is to accurately understand it.
Yeah, let's
just see if he can.
Let's see if he can do that, because I have some doubts.
But also just debunking the myths about evolutionary theory from just a strictly scientific perspective. It's not that hard to do. There's a mountain of resistance, but it's not actually that sophisticated.
The theory of evolution isn't sophisticated now.
I mean, yeah. I mean, the principle of natural selection is simple, right? Fair enough.
Yeah.
But the biological and ecological processes are far from simple. Like they're not simple at all. I mean, take Hovine's favourite, right? The giraffe. Let's call it inmate 06452017.
Yeah, okay. the giraffe, yeah, okay, right. Inmate 06452017, right. Nailing down the exact process why this giraffe has long necks, it is pretty difficult. You have the obvious one. Longer necks meant that it could reach higher foliage, so a survival selection process takes place. There's also possibility of a sexual selection process where perhaps females find longer necks to be more attractive, and so longer neck specimens would be more likely to attract a male.
Yeah, like the classic example of that is the peacock, right? So you have this wonderful, beautiful plumage, and Does that help it escape predators?
No, it makes it very easy for them to get caught.
Yeah, but so why do they have them? Why would evolution select for this? Well, it's simply because female peacocks have very fine taste.
They just
if you
can't
want
get
to be
enough of that sexy tail.
Yeah, they want sexy tail. If you want to successfully survive as a peacock, then you're going to get some cumbersome, annoying tail as a male.
So we're going to go over 5 key points that we've decided here as a team that are things that'll come up that at least can give you the ability to talk about this intelligently and make people kind of scratch their heads and go, okay, that's not as easy to answer as I thought.
Brilliant. The goal is to get his audience to talk about evolution intelligently. Love it. Brilliant goal.
That's a decent goal. I'm interested to see. Yeah, like fair enough. Like that's a good goal. Let's see what he's got.
And I've been in this situation myself, where I've gone toe to toe with people who write, school textbooks and things like that, and I've said, listen, this cannot be taught in this manner. They think, well, you must be crazy, and we sit down, we talk, and it gets to the point where they kind of go, yeah, I mean, those are things that I cannot answer.
Who have you spoken to?
Oh,
like who? This just sounds like a claim with absolutely no evidence. People that write textbooks, really?
Yeah. I have sat down with several unnamed popes who, after 10 minutes, said, "Oh, I was wrong about all this.
Right.
This happened." Yeah.
Okay. Right. Brilliant. Exactly. Just never drop the names. Okay.
No.
Drop the names. All right. But this is great because what we're about to hear from Kennedy is 5 points that made those that write the textbooks change their mind. That's big.
Yeah, it must be really, really good stuff.
Really good evidence.
I hope it's as good as what I said to the Pope.
And with something so grandiose and all-encompassing as this evolutionary theory has societal implications, academic implications, religious implications, and so forth, we better be sure about it. Because if we're wrong, we're basically just promulgating a massive myth.
Agreed,
Yeah.
but yeah, this is why we're sure.
We're
right?
really sure.
Yeah,
That's why we spend a lot of time on this.
Absolutely, and it's like evolution is somewhat unique, or it's one of those theories that traverses across so many different domains of discourse that it's being tested by many different fields all the damn time. Right? You've got genetics, anatomy, embryology, paleontology, ecology, chemistry, chronology, right? There's just all of these
and more. There's more than that.
Yeah, there's more than that. It's not like, because you see this from creationists. They like to make out that evolution just is taken by the scientific committee for some reason without any kind of level of skepticism. And it's like, no, evolution has been thoroughly tested for over a century.
Yeah, all of those Steve mentioned have had so many chances to debunk evolution, but instead they've not only bolstered evolution, but evolution has then retroactively bolstered their fields as well. It's all interconnected.
There's some things that I won't be able to get to here. I'm not going to be able to get to things about specifics about the age of the Earth, for example. I'm not going to be able to go into the specific realities of the hominid creatures. There's lots of things I can't get to in such a short video.
Hang on. He's just said it's not very sophisticated, but then he's just mentioned that there are a whole bunch of complex fields, as you said, that support evolution that he hasn't got time to get into.
But fair enough, okay, right? He just wants to focus on 5 points, okay?
Yeah, and it's his 5 points that convince those that write the textbooks.
How many points did you need to convince the popes?
42.
So number 1, the Big Bang.
Oh, for crying out loud.
I know I said that it covers a lot of fields. The Big Bang is not one of them.
You've heard of the Big Bang. The Big Bang is the idea that 13-ish billion years ago, maybe longer, depending on the theory and depending on what year they decide to tweak the numbers, because it's all settled, by the way.
Right, I'm getting annoyed already.
Yeah.
No scientific theory has ever said anything is settled as such. The models adapt and change to new data. So they are our most correct understanding we have at this moment. But yeah, our knowledge isn't perfect. We're always improving the model.
Yeah, definitely. And this is why we call it the theory of evolution by natural selection. The theory of general relativity, the theory of the Big Bang. Okay, so we make observations and then we update our models. And if our models just can't make sense of those observations, then we discard them.
Yeah,
right.
Adapting and changing to new information and the observation is something that just religions can't seem to do.
Yeah, this is the fundamental difference between science, right, and religion. It comes down to religion cannot change its mind. You're seeing it here. It can, right? Because most Christians today...
No, the people can change their mind.
Yes.
The religion as such is sort of stuck in what it's originally got.
I would agree with you, yes. But like, most Christians accept evolution, right?
Yeah, they have to come with non-literal interpretations to get there.
I do agree, right? And like, most Christians don't endorse slavery. They have to like somehow bypass, and I'd say, in my experience, maybe half of Christians accept homosexuals. They have to be, dealing with their book in a very
loose manner,
specious way, exactly. But as you say, like, it doesn't lend itself very well to being adapted to observation and knowledge and science and whatnot. Whereas science just doesn't work this way.
It's a great thing. One thing you cannot do with the Bible is tear pages of it out and throw it away.
Precisely.
You can with science if you find the information on those pages no longer fit the data.
Exactly, and it's happened so many times throughout history that it's just, this is the beauty of science. It's so obviously in pursuit of truth at all costs, whereas religion is not that. It's the complete opposite.
There's this idea that basically the universe popped out of nothing, and from there we have what they call the Big Bang.
Oh, it doesn't say that the universe came from nothing. Why does this keep coming up?
Even a rudimentary, basic understanding of the Big Bang Theory would have you know that what he just said is nonsense.
Yeah.
It just doesn't claim that.
No, it doesn't claim. It's an expansion. It doesn't say that this expansion is the beginning of everything. It says that everything that we observe today was compressed into this hot, dense state. It doesn't say where this hot, dense state came from because, well, we don't know.
It certainly doesn't say that it came from nothing, right? No. And I'm so tired of this straw man at this point. Like,
it's exhausting.
Apologists have been running around with this straw man of the Big Bang, this complete misunderstanding of the Big Bang, for several decades at least, and very confidently and very strongly stated, and it's just, again, it just doesn't say that.
Well, they're about to see it with the Islamic scholar that you're currently covering.
Yeah.
It's
he
not
doesn't
just Christianity.
It
comes from
and
everywhere.
you know what? It's really weird from my perspective because I read the works of, say, Aquinas, right, which is probably a dude that this guy likes, and Aquinas gives this very cogent understanding that the universe could be eternal and yet still have been created by God. He doesn't have to. Christians, religious theists, they don't have to say that the universe began to exist. They don't. They can still have God with a model where it's eternal.
You've heard of the Big Bang. The Big Bang is the idea that 13-ish billion years ago, maybe longer, depending on the theory and depending on which year they decide to tweak the numbers, because it's all settled, by the way. There's this idea that basically the universe popped out of nothing, and from there we have what they call the Big Bang. In reality, I've heard some scientists say it wasn't really an explosion, but that's sort of a metaphor. Some say that it's more like an expansion of light. It doesn't matter.
No, it actually does matter, right? There's a difference between an explosion and an expansion. It's rather like saying that it doesn't matter if God is omnipotent. Yeah, it does matter, okay? That has really serious theological implications.
I mean, he also said it was an expansion of light, which is
yes,
that's a whole other thing there that he's making a mistake on. But
very true.
I actually kind of want to correct myself on what I said in our first Lowfruit, because a couple of you out there did pick me up on for making a mistake. With
they were like, actually.
Yeah. So an expansion is just things is moving apart, whereas an explosion is the rapid release of energy, consuming material to produce heat and light. Draw some dots on a balloon and pump it up. The dots will move apart as the balloon expands. The flat balloon in this analogy is our universe prior to the Big Bang, and the inflating balloon is our universe now.
Yep.
It's expanding. It doesn't require an explosion.
You've redeemed yourself.
I hope so.
Oh, the comments are going to flood with, yes, Reese.
Or there's going to
redemption
go with,
story.
No, you've still got it wrong.
It's actually quite simple to find a way to debunk this idea of the Big Bang.
Wait, what? He's now debunking the Big Bang as well as the evolution. Why do they do this? They always start off with this simple task of debunking evolution. They go, also thermodynamics is nonsense. Also the Big Bang. What are they doing?
You're wrong, Steve.
Yeah.
The Big Bang is part of evolution.
Fuck's sake.
And you might be asking yourself, why am I talking about the Big Bang and evolution?
That is what we're thinking.
Exactly that.
Please explain.
Well, the Big Bang is basically just evolution in the heavens, and it's actually necessary for this whole mentality that we follow with evolutionary theory.
Right. He's just claimed that the Big Bang is just evolution of the stars, which is astronomical nonsense. That's just not true.
I know something interesting about these two things, Steve.
They're not related, are they? They're not related. Yeah.
But he's saying that the Big Bang is necessary for the mentality of evolution. No, they're so unrelated that you don't even need to believe in both of them at the same time. There's loads of people now that don't.
Yeah, well, a good instance of this is Fred Hoyle, right? He was an atheist, and he believed in the steady state model, which is something that competed with the Big Bang until observations from Hubble and whatnot basically made it so the steady state has to go bye-bye. By the way, that's an instance of a scientific theory going bye-bye because of observations. So what we have here is Kennedy trying to pit the Big Bang Theory against Christianity.
Yeah, but
right?
the fact that an atheist can believe in an alternate model shows that it's not necessarily...
Yeah.
It's not necessary, to believe in Big Bang cosmology to get to evolution.
Yeah, and the opposite's true, of course, as we were just saying about Aquinas.
Yeah, and furthermore, really want to make sure that he knows this one. The man who proposed the Big Bang Theory was George Lemaitre. I've probably butchered the name, but in any case, he was a Catholic priest.
Yeah, Catholic priest, dude.
So the idea that there was a universe that popped out of nothing.
Oh, stop it.
Stop it.
No.
Stop it. Stop lying.
And not just
For
Kennedy.
Jesus.
Any creationist that says that.
Pow.
Stop it.
Hovind. Stop it. Stop.
Pointy atheist. Ray likes these.
Pointy atheist. Ray likes this.
All it will take is an intellectual atheist or a skeptic to talk you out of it.
So the idea that there was a universe that popped out of nothing. Well, here's the problem. If you look into the basic consensus on what Big Bang cosmologists will posit about this theory, in essence, there are elements that are present at the time of this Big Bang.
Yeah, it's almost as if it's not a beginning of everything, isn't it?
It's like it doesn't say that or something.
Yeah.
There are also forces that are necessary, like gravity, to cause the environment to be such that you could have this massive pressure, which leads to these things for the expansion.
Bro, in essence, call me skeptical, but I don't think he knows what he's on about.
Yeah, in essence, that is the worst explanation for the Big Bang I've heard for at least 3 days.
In essence.
To cause the environment to be such that you could have this massive pressure, which leads to these things for the expansion. But the problem with that is, in order to have these elements, you're going to need something like star fusion, which will create these elements. So if you have something like star fusion that can create elements, then you have to have things like stars. In order to have things like stars, you're going to have something like a universe, which means ultimately you're going to have to explain to me how the Big Bang started from nothing, but at the same time it also needed a universe to begin.
If I could roll my eyes any further, they'd be in the back of my skull. This man, oh.
So frustrating. Look, at the time of the Big Bang, there was no elements. There wasn't even atoms, okay? We don't get hydrogen or helium until the universe had significantly cooled.
Yeah, if you can, allow me to give a very dumbed down and quick explanation here. Might help him out, I don't know.
No, it won't. It won't. He's always going to say that it's from nothing.
Sure. Everything, not nothing, everything was in a hot, dense state. And we know nothing.
Observable universe.
We know nothing about what was prior to this. Now, that doesn't mean that there was nothing. It just means we don't know. But everything that we have today was condensed into this hot, dense state. It then, for whatever reason, it begins to expand. And as it expands, it cools down. As it cools down, atoms form. From there, we can get our basic elements, hydrogen and helium. This then allows for the formation of stars, because hydrogen is the key component of stars. From the stars, yes, then we get our other elements, which then get us to planets.
Okay, but where in this story does Jesus sacrifice himself to himself?
Well, it's about 13.7 billion years after the start of the Big Bang.
Of course.
I've also heard scientists say, I think Stephen Hawking said it, because of the force of gravity, the universe can create itself from nothing.
Citation needed. Like, I'm going to bet he didn't say that. I'm going to bet this guy has taken and mangled something that he said, not understood it, like he's not understood Big Bang or evolution.
I've heard some popes say that Jesus isn't real.
Well, I'm sorry, but how can there be a force of gravitation, which is clearly a force within the universe, according to these scientists, if there is no universe to have this force in the first place?
Right, I feel like we've just got to constantly repeat ourselves to this man.
We do, yeah.
The observable universe was in a hot, dense state. And all that is required for gravity is mass. And when everything is in this small, hot, dense state, you have a lot of mass.
I'm starting to feel really dubious about the claim he made about convincing all of those textbook writers. I mean...
Yeah. If this was what he was presenting.
If you really get into the logic of the Big Bang, it crumbles pretty quickly.
If you actually get into the logic of the Big Bang, you realise that it is simply not what Kennedy pretends it is.
I can't believe he just said that.
And in fairness to those who advocate for it and do essentially consider these things, you start to see these ideas of, well, the Big Bang was just one sort of creation event in a series of them where there's sort of this going out and coming back and whatever.
So remember what I said earlier about updating our models with new information and scrapping the ones that don't fit?
Yep.
The big crunch that he's sort of describing here is pretty much been discarded at this point because it doesn't fit what we're observing, which is that the expansion isn't slowing down for a contraction, but rather that it's going to continue indefinitely. Yeah. So he's wrong again.
Yeah, similar observations that made the steady state no longer viable.
Yeah.
Like, this is good examples of science being absolutely in the pursuit of truth.
You start to sound a little bit crazy, going around the rabbit hole a little bit too much. The Big Bang makes no sense logically. You can do all of the sort of sophisticated mathematic and documentaries and CGI stuff you want, but if you're going to tell me that the universe began from nothing, but you have to have something in order to have nothing, then you start to sound like a crazy person. It's just a reality.
Which is why no one says that. No one in this field ever says anything like that.
No.
It's only you that ends up sounding like a crazy person.
Remember, step one to debunking the Big Bang would be accurately representing it.
Yeah.
Step one
in debunking evolution would be to start with what evolution is, not the Big Bang.
Yes, exactly. Honestly, at least when Powell does this kind of nonsense, it's funny.
Yeah, well, he's quite memeable.
Funny. This guy takes himself so seriously. It's just...
Point number 2 is the idea of entropy.
Oh, entropy, man. I got a cool little story to share from my trip in Austin. Okay, so recently I went to Austin for the Faithless Forum. Awesome event, hanging out with some lovely people. And I'm chilling out with Thomas Westbrook, Holy Kool-Aid, at Walmart.
Right.
And we're getting food for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Brilliant, by the way. I really enjoyed that. It was really fun.
Was it better than fireworks?
Yeah, it's better than fireworks. The Americans, they're doing well there, I've got to say. But it was, we're going through Walmart, and I'm wearing my Darwin t-shirt. Where it's got, like, on the back, it's got the dates of where he went on the Beagle. So it looks like a album shirt. It's my favourite shirt. I think it's so cool. So I'm walking around. You know, I wear that in England. No one has ever mentioned anything. Like, not even like, oh, nice shirt. Anything like that, right? However, in Walmart, this guy limps towards me, okay, chewing tobacco. It's a Walmart employee. And he comes up to me and he goes, entropy. I go, sorry, what? And he goes, entropy. That shirt you got on's wrong. And I'm like, I forgive the accent. I won't keep doing the accent.
No, please do.
Okay, I'm going to keep doing it. Entropy. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, entropy debunks evolution. Like, evolution, second law of thermodynamics. Look it up. And I'm like, can you tell me what the first law is? And he goes, no. I go, can you explain to me what the second law of thermodynamics is? He goes, look it up. I'm like,
so he doesn't know that.
No, but he's heard some idiot like this mention that entropy debunks evolution by natural selection. So basically, he also only had a few teeth. So I was thinking, to be fair, this guy probably knows something about entropy.
They're all just randomly falling out.
But yeah, it was a bizarre experience. So entropy, it comes from preachers like this, right, where they drop nonsense such as this. Let's hear what he's got to have to say.
Now, entropy is essentially this idea, in layman's terms, that everything goes from order to disorder. We see this not just with cosmological things, we also see people talking about things like genetic entropy and so forth. Well, here's the thing. The idea of entropy essentially posits that we have a universe that is destabilizing. And as I said, you will see scientists apply this to things like genetics. So you have things like genetics that are destabilizing.
Okay, so first of all, entropy, as described as the second law of thermodynamics, is completely different to the creationist claim of genetic entropy, which is just utter nonsense. But we'll see which of these two prongs he's going to push on.
Well, let's try and use layman's terms, as he wanted to go with.
Yep.
In closed systems, the amount of randomness will increase over time.
Yes.
With this order to disorder thing he's talking about, we're talking about the increase in possible arrangement of atoms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Look, I am not fully equipped to properly understand entropy.
Yeah, entropy is a hard thing to understand.
Really hard thing.
It's genuinely a difficult one.
And frankly, if I'm not equipped to understand it,
Yeah.
he's not equipped to understand it based on that description of the Big Bang earlier.
And as I said, you will see scientists apply this to things like genetics. So you have things like genetics that are destabilizing.
One scientist
Yeah.
who's a creationist,
Yeah.
and then he tries to apply it to things like genetics.
Yeah. Not plural.
One scientist.
But the problem with that is that as we go on in this theory of evolution, we actually see things getting more sophisticated, more refined. So for example, you have this sort of amorphous beginning of the universe, this sort of Big Bang, and then from there you have this randomness that becomes order, which gives us the things that we need to have life. That's the opposite of things destabilizing.
Right. Instances of order are still compatible with randomness. And, well, even more than that, you can have smaller open systems within the larger closed system of the universe. So in an open system such as our Earth, there is still energy being put into the system to do work. So entropy remains low, even as the overall entropy of the universe increases.
And it's also... So evolution by natural selection is not random. They incessantly present it as if it is, okay?
Yeah.
But look, genetic mutations are random. So when like a mother and a father, or a male and a female, they reproduce and they have a baby, and the baby's going to get genetic information from both of them, but it isn't copied perfect. There are mutations, right? So that those mutations can be considered random in the sense that they're not essentially determined in the way that we would conventionally think of it, right?
Okay.
But as to whether or not those mutations survive is dictated by natural selection, which is just not random.
No, so it's
And-
like a control, isn't it?
Yeah,
Over what is going to be picked out.
It's a control. It's a selection for a certain form of order.
We also see this in the human person, where they're telling us where you're going to have destabilization of the human person through things like genetic entropy, but we're also supposed to believe that we have this less sophisticated species and they turn into more sophisticated species.
Let me explain his argument, because he's not going to, right?
Yeah.
This creationist idea of genetic entropy is that negative mutations are accumulating rapidly in the human genome. That these are then causing a decline in human fitness. That's eventually going to cause us to go extinct, right?
Yeah.
So some perfect design by God there, right?
Yeah.
This totally ignores what natural selection does.
Yep.
With the most destructive mutations. Well, the person in question may not even be born. And if they do, they probably won't reach a reproductive age. So all of those damaging mutations are obviously, they're going to get filtered out.
Yeah.
And then other negative mutations, if we have medicine that overcomes it, well, it's no longer a negative mutation, because it doesn't really matter then to the selection process.
Because it's contingent on the environment.
Yeah, and then there's other mutations as well, like my baldness, for example. Doesn't hinder my survival at all.
No.
So then you're coming down into sexual selection, right?
Yeah.
Well, thankfully, there are at least some ladies out there that do like bald men. So, you know.
That's very true.
And then just to mention one more thing on that, sorry.
Yeah.
Negative mutations are not just suddenly transmitted to the rest of the human species, right? When we do have a negative mutation in someone, that isn't, uploaded to the human server and distributed to everyone. So It's not going to just suddenly be spread around the world.
Yeah.
This whole thing is bollocks.
It is, yeah. And also, like, natural selection doesn't always select for complexity or sophistication. What it does is it selects for survival. So
Or
it could...
sexual.
But sexual would also fall as survival, right? It's like, it doesn't pick you to be like a predator or like, you know, it's basically as long as there's survivability, that's what it will select for. It does work in like paradoxical ways sometimes, right? Sexual selection is an instance of that, but it certainly doesn't always drive towards sophistication. Sometimes things that have, so you might have an organism, a species that has sophisticated anatomy, a sophisticated sophisticated anatomy, but what will happen is that they will lose that because it's no longer beneficial for them to have it. Snakes losing limbs, right? So snakes evolved from lizards that had limbs and they've lost them over time. The mole, we mentioned the mole before, right? You have this mole and it has eyes that are covered with skin and fur.
So it can't see with them.
Yeah. Which is fine according to evolution, but this is a selection away from the sophistication of the eye, isn't it?
Yeah.
Either that or God has a wicked sense of humor.
Which primarily or previously we can't do things like read and write and speak. We don't have these faculties, which is obviously a sign of sophistication if you compare humans to animals. But then we have apparently this point where we get so sophisticated somehow in this entropy where things are destabilizing that we actually get more sophisticated. It doesn't make any logical sense.
It does if you understand it.
Like most of these things he's talking about.
But I'm going to throw the entropy theorist a little bone here.
Wait, does this guy accept entropy or not?
No, so what he's trying to do is use entropy to prove that entropy doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, okay,
It's,
right.
It's
Right.
this thing, you see so many creationists do this, where they want to use science to reject science, but then say that their science works.
Yeah, it's like an internal critique. He's trying to use things that his opposition accept to show that they're not compatible kind of thing. So this guy, Kennedy, right, he rejects evolution by natural selection, he rejects the Big Bang, and he rejects, entropy. Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes I think the truth of the faith actually get mixed in because the truth can't help but reveal itself. Entropy as an idea does not make sense with evolution, but it actually kind of does make sense with creationism.
Okay, yeah, I see the reductio point now, right? He's trying to say that it doesn't make sense with evolution, which it does.
Yeah, but hang on. Sorry. To say that it's compatible with creationism is to say, you know, with his definition of entropy that he's using, is that God created things to destabilize, to collapse and fail.
That's just brilliant.
I thought God created everything perfect.
Yes, but like they really do want that cake and they want to eat it too, because they want to say that God is all powerful and all loving, he knows all of these things, and yet he's not morally responsible for making people sick, as Hitchens put it, and commanding them to be well. Right? For making I don't know, I struggle to even conceive how you can think of a perfect being creating an imperfect creation.
Yeah, I don't either.
There's got to be a fiat.
I'm staggered though at this idea that he's saying this thing he doesn't believe makes sense with creationism, which means that God screwed everything up.
Yep.
Move on.
Because we believe that God created things in a state of perfection, and because of sin, things have started to destabilize morally. But we see this in the physical realm.
Okay, well, he admits it, yes, that God's creation is collapsing. So God's creation was so perfect, it could be damaged. No, destroyed by a man eating an apple.
So perfect that he had to destroy the entirety of his children to start again.
And so perfect that after he started again, he wasn't able to fix it properly, and it's continued to break ever more.
So perfect, right? Just so sheer perfect that he provides some of his children with adequate food some of the time.
And one of the ways we see this is when you see the ancient the texts of the Old Testament, and we see the ages of the patriarchs and things before the flood, and they lived for hundreds of years. Well, that sort of thing actually makes sense if your human constitution is much more stable and perfected than it will be later on as sin proliferates itself through the world. And we see after God sends the flood with Noah that we don't live much longer than we do now. We stop living as long as we did in the beginning.
Dude, God is a terrible developer, okay? Because in Earth 1.0, Earth 1.0 was accidentally hacked by Adam and Eve, but his subsequent updates have just broken things even more.
Yeah, he released version 1.5 alongside the flood, but that broke things even more, as you said, and now we don't live as long. And we can no longer even build wooden ships to the size the Ark would needed to have been to hold that many creatures.
Very true.
We can't get it to that scale now without it breaking under the stresses of ocean travel.
Yes, so lumber took a massive nerf in Earth 1.5. That's the one, yeah. Like the lifespans, dude. Like from 1,000 to less than 100.
It's totally opposite to what our observations are. The lifespan of humans has only increased with our understanding of nature. We wouldn't even have some of the medicines we do today without understanding evolution. We wouldn't be able to live this long.
And where's his evidence that humans lived 1,000 years?
The Bible. That's it. It's all he's got. Because everything else gets rejected.
And we also see sort of an evidence of how in the beginning there was a perfection to creation when we look at the incorruptible saints. Because if you think about the fact that death comes into the world because of sin, well, extreme virtue, extreme holiness, saintliness would perhaps reverse this sort of thing, at least in an example that we can look to, and we see incorruptible saints of these amazing saintly priests and nuns, for example.
You have no evidence at all these people were perfect. And please don't say the Bible, because it's just not.
Yeah, no evidence of this. And then, so after Noah's flood in version 1.5, human lifespans were dropped by 9/10.
Yeah, it was pretty bad patch.
But all of these miracles, they didn't get patched out until the invention of the camera.
No, but Magic did make a comeback in patch 1.987 when Photoshop was patched in.
Yes.
So entropy doesn't actually, it's not that it doesn't make sense as an idea, it's that the scientists are telling us that entropy is a real thing in the universe, but at the same time for evolution we need the opposite of that to happen.
No.
So it has to be one or the other. You can't have two contradictory things at the same time.
You can if you understand them.
They don't contradict, you witless beetroot.
Number 3 is the idea of random mutation. This is pretty easy to debunk. We know what random mutation looks like. Random mutation looks like basically severe handicaps.
That's one result of random mutation, and please be careful of where you go from here.
Yeah, I mean, like, another result is incredible talent, okay? Another result still is that it basically has no effect.
Yeah.
They're neutral, like eye color.
Or boldness.
When people study cells, and they have these generations of cells, and there's a lab near Ottawa that does this, where they have these cells essentially regenerating, and they're creating millions of generations in a very short amount of time. Whenever there's a random mutation, it actually destroys the cell line. It actually creates things that deform the cell line.
So technically, every change is a deformation of the previous form.
Yeah.
Good, bad, neutral, doesn't matter. It's deformed.
Yeah, deformations towards what? Greater neck length, or it could be greater eyesight or harder skin. Yeah. And like these deformations, these genetic mutations are corruptions of the prior forms. Yeah. But whether or not they're preserved or, discarded to history is dictated by natural selection. So again, it's not random. It's just not random.
And he's also not understanding what that means.
Yeah.
And when we see this in people, it creates these severe disorders and handicaps that cause a lot of suffering. So we have no evidence at all. We have no evidence at all that random mutations, so-called, actually do anything beneficial to the human species.
Yes, they do.
Yep.
Okay, so say a mutation resulted in one being able to digest lactose. Is that an advantage or a disadvantage? Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You know, what about resistance to disease or lack of wisdom teeth?
Well, these all seem like they're destroying us.
Yeah, they're totally
just
destroying us.
Honestly,
it's unbelievable.
The sheer confidence in which he's been saying these things just bellies the ignorance from which he's making them.
Random mutations, again, seen played out. I've been to an orphanage in Mexico City where children have very severe handicaps, mutations, birth defects. And it's very sad. I've spent lots of time with them, and it is the furthest thing from, let's say, a physical improvement to the human person.
There's a lot of things that creationists say that I can laugh at, but it's things like this that just infuriate me, okay? Right? So, bring it down a bit. Not all mutations are beneficial, but not all are detrimental, okay? But the real fact of the matter is this. You believe your all-loving God gave these children the things from which they suffer. Your all-loving God torments them. Nature, it's brutal in its apathy, okay?
Absolutely.
But if your God exists, then he is the most abusive tyrant possible.
Amen. And what I will say on top of this is that this God, this father figure, right, he torments his children because their great-great-great-great-great-grandparents took an apple.
Yeah.
And they were ignorant of what the apple would do, which is give them knowledge, because for some reason knowledge is the enemy. Like, religion can get people to speak so stupidly.
And this in this story, this is an apple which God supposedly created, knowing that if they ate it, it would then cause infinite pain to his infinitely ignorant children and all of their descendants.
All of the descendants.
And then he left it where they could find it. So he set them up to suffer eternally.
Yeah, and like, I mean, Genesis is quite clear. They didn't, Adam and Eve didn't know any better. Didn't know about knowledge. They had no knowledge of good and evil. Which means that, like, you know, if someone does something bad, but say a child does something bad, like a young child pushes down a glass, but has no conception of what they've just done, no conception at all, like Adam and Eve had. Well,
do you remember they didn't have knowledge yet?
No, none. Do you blame them?
No.
Do you punish them? Do you infinitely punish them? Do you infinitely punish their great-great-great-great-grandchildren? Like, this scapegoating nonsense is just so barbaric.
No, when you read these parts of the Bible, it's some of the most just abhorrent stuff I've ever read.
Yeah.
That people believe this is a good thing. I don't understand it.
Poison.
I hate it.
Poison.
There is a great spiritual benefit in being around handicapped peoples.
Yes, I'm sure there's a great spiritual benefit to telling these children that the God that causes them pain, well, he really loves them.
Yeah. Ugh! One thing is for sure, we're not getting any intellectual or spiritual benefit from listening to Kennedy spew absolute crap.
No.
And we ought to advocate against eugenics and abortion because they seek to eradicate these people who are also God's children, and it makes me sick.
Did this man just equate abortion with eugenics?
Yeah, an efficient straw man of the totality of pro-choice philosophy.
Oh my God.
But we cannot say that random mutation actually does anything to evolve the human species.
Describe to us the role of natural selection in evolution. Because I don't think you can. I think you've got no concept of what it is at all.
Or if you...
And I think you've gone out of your way to make sure you have no concept of it at all.
In fact, we can't even make an analogy in just the realm of philosophy that even makes sense. You know, for example, people will say, well, this is an idea of random mutation or random things happening. You know, you put 1 million monkeys in front of 1 million typewriters, and after 1 million years, you get them writing Shakespeare. Well, this is a fun little experiment, but it's never going to happen.
But right, putting aside the fact that natural selection is not random.
No.
Okay. The mathematics of the infinite monkey theorem is actually both crystal clear and quite easy to understand. Okay.
Yeah.
A monkey hitting a keyboard
At random.
for an infinite amount of time will almost surely produce any given text as long as it's possible for it to write it. That's just the way that it works, okay?
Yeah, because every possible combination will come up.
Yeah, an infinite number of times. As long as it's possible. This theorem is used to demonstrate just how unintuitive the infinite is.
Mm.
And Kennedy is just wrong. He's just wrong when he says that this will never happen. Yes, it would happen. It's just nothing more than a personal incredulity fallacy.
Yeah.
But again, he states it with very, a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
But also, you're forgetting the fact that the typewriter already exists, and that typewriter is made by an intelligent mind, and it has an ordered way of operating. You can only do English letters, and you have to do them a certain way. The language already exists. There's nothing random about that.
Yes, a typewriter is made by an intelligent mind, which is why you couldn't make a typewriter.
Look, the infinite theory, the infinite monkey theorem is a metaphor. It's not to be taken literally. It's a metaphor to illustrate one of the weird and paradoxical things about the infinite. I don't know why he's taking it literally, but it's effectively a straw man to do so, by the way. He's pretending that evolution is completely random, which means he either doesn't understand it or he's just ignoring it.
Yeah. But he does say, even if this is true, somebody else made this thing. So
He did.
People will say, well, no, randomness can make order. If you put laundry in a dryer and you let that go endlessly, I had a student say this to me once, and you let that go endlessly, or you do an infinite amount of cycles, eventually, by the odds, the clothes are going to come out folded. I mean, that's probably technically true mathematically. It's probably 1 in a bazillion, whatever the number would be.
Yes, you should have listened to the student, because that is precisely what the math says. If you repeat an experiment an infinite number of times, then every possible outcome will turn up an infinite number of times.
But you're forgetting that the laundry machine is already designed, and it can only go in a certain direction. And it's actually quite specific in its ordering, so nothing's random about that at all. You do not get any order from randomness.
what you've done is make a piss poor analogy, and then you've criticised it as if we made it. We call this a straw man.
Yes, he's again, right, he's taking an analogy literally when the analogy merely illustrates one of the paradoxical things about the infinite.
Yeah, we're not saying there is literally a man-made infinite washing machine. We're not saying that.
No.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't matter how much time you give yourself. And maybe this is a subheading of random mutation. It's this idea that we can have anything happen with a limited amount of time, unlimited amount of time. No. Your cereal box will never jump out of your cupboard, pour itself into your bowl, and the milk will not walk out and pour itself on top. I don't care if you give it 50 bazillion, trillion, gajillion years. Something like that randomly is never going to happen.
Right. This new analogy, okay, doesn't map onto the infinite monkey theorem,
No.
which doesn't map onto natural selection.
No, he's just spraying shit faster than a man with diarrhea after a curry.
Now that is how you do an analogy. That's how you do an analogy. Also, look, in this scenario, he's described what he's just described. Is it possible? Right, that's the question. Did what he just described with the
scenario he set up there? Yeah,
the cereal coming out and pouring a bowl, is that actually possible? Because if it's not, if it's impossible, then the probability of it occurring is 0. So you can run the trial an infinite number of times. What's the chances of it turning up? 0. It just won't turn up. So the infinite monkey theorem is used to describe events with non-zero probability. There has to be a chance of it occurring.
Yeah, when you're typing random keys for an infinite amount of time, it's possible that they could type something like Shakespeare. The monkey is already doing an action.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And the washing machine, in this case, is already spinning. With the box sitting in a cupboard, it's a non-event. Nothing is occurring to then randomly produce a result.
Yeah.
You need order from intelligence in order for these things to happen. Any improvement is not random.
You don't need intelligence, and if you had intelligence, you'd know that.
Point number 4. We're going to call this just inconvenient truths. There's a bunch of inconvenient truths that tend to go against the evolutionary narrative, many of them historical. First one, there was a dinosaur bone discovered, Tyrannosaurus rex, if I'm not mistaken.
He's going to mention Mary Schweitzer. He's going to do it. He's going to misrepresent her again. Oh, man.
First one, there was a dinosaur bone discovered, Tyrannosaurus rex, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was from Death Valley, that's a famous place in the Midwestern United States. The dinosaur bone story essentially goes like this. A woman named Mary Schweitzer.
Yes, I can. Cool. We can see it gonna happen every time.
Can creationists please leave this poor Christian alone for Christ's sake?
I honestly, I feel terrible
that
she's so constantly misrepresented by these creationists.
Poor Mary, like, for crying out loud.
German background, she was raised evangelical Christian, went off to university, discovered the big bad theory of evolution, and became an agnostic.
He just lies so just
easily.
Blasé. just lies just with no issues, because Mary is still a Christian, okay? Yeah. She was a young Earth creationist, believing that the Earth was 6,000 years old, and she rejected evolution. Mm-hmm. And there's a very cool interview with her. I'll bring it up, okay?
Yeah.
So she wanted to prove evolution wrong to a university lecturer, but after 6 months of looking at the evidence, not just 5 minutes listening to other creationists, she realized she was wrong.
So she was a skeptic of the traditional Christian dating of all these things. She sort of rejected it, which is important for the story. She's discovering in this place where there's tons of these dinosaur bones, and essentially through a series of events of having to move one bone, they ended up slicing it in half. I don't know why they do this, but apparently they do this for research.
Apparently. If you don't know why they do it, you should probably, I don't know, try to find out before then using it as evidence, right?
Yes.
All you've done here is demonstrate you don't know what you're talking about.
So let's do what he won't and actually look this up.
12 seconds later.
Right, it was broken for transport. Now that wasn't hard, was it, Kennedy?
She ends up finding within the bone something that looks like organic tissue. I want to stop there for a second. It's impossible given carbon dating norms.
Whoa, wait, why is he bringing up carbon dating?
Oh, because he hasn't got a clue what he's talking about.
Yeah.
We don't use carbon dating with dinosaur bones.
Nope.
It's just not done.
It's like saying it's impossible with dendrochronology norms for the sun to be older than the Earth.
That we've been given by the powers that be in the scientific community that organic tissue could be preserved for such a long period of time, especially in the inside of a fossil. So this was inside the fossil, okay?
Right. This organic tissue needed to be soaked in an acid bath to demineralize it. Mm. They then found collagen fibers, and now we think that the preservation process required for these to remain is more common than we originally thought, okay? Yep. Carbon-14 dating says nothing about being able to find these. Nothing.
Organic tissue. Well, she investigated the organic tissue, and she ended up finding things like red blood cells. Impossible if this thing is, I don't know, how old are T-Rexes? 60, 80 million years or something like that? Impossible.
That is just personal incredulity.
It's impossible.
Impossible. But humans living for 1,000 years. Possible. Yeah.
As we talked about in the episode with Matt Powell, go watch it if you haven't. Brilliant fun.
Yes.
What was discovered was a cross-linking process involving iron. It creates chemical bonds between the proteins in the tissue, which then prevents its decay. This is a process we've known about and understood since the 1860s with formaldehyde, okay? This is just a slightly different process where it uses iron in the blood. It's the same thing. We know what it is. We've used it for ages. Stop claiming it's impossible.
Impossible.
Well, the thing about these organic tissues, they could be dated using these carbon dating techniques.
You are not going to get an accurate result using carbon-14 over, say, uranium-238.
No, you're right. But what about uranium-235?
Yeah, that'll work.
Potassium-argon dating?
Yep.
But not carbon-14?
No.
Not carbon-14?
No,
okay.
Not carbon-14.
What about if we use the Bible?
No. The Bible can't even be used to date humans, for crying out loud.
Well, the thing about these organic tissues, they could be dated using these carbon dating techniques. And they ended up finding out that these were about 6,000 years old.
Citation needed.
Yeah, I'm just going to call it what it is. That's a lie.
Yeah. Look, it's a baseless assertion, and that which is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Hitchens razor.
So, her and her mentor, who were both fighting against the sort of fundamentalist Christian creationist narrative, they said, well, you obviously have to disprove this.
No, that's not what they did. Mary has made this clear in multiple interviews, that she was just trying to figure out, as scientists were, how this was preserved.
Oh, we've got this strange thing. How did it happen?
Yeah.
Not, this doesn't fit our information.
Yep.
Let's ignore it. That's what you do. That's literally what you do.
Yep. It's worse than that. Let's lie about it. Let's pretend it's not what it is. Let's grotesquely misrepresent it. But don't worry, we're going to heaven. The honest scientists aren't.
No.
That's fine. Scientists should seek to disprove their findings. They spent 10 years trying to disprove it. This was about 2006 when they found it. 2016, they sort of finally said, we're enough of this. The best they could come up with actually ended up disproving the dating methods entirely.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't.
What's he talking about?
Reese, I found this new way that we can preserve proteins for longer than we previously thought.
Wow, that proves radiometric dating doesn't work.
The one idea that they came up with was essentially, and I remember reading this about her, I think it was Smithsonian Magazine.
I remember reading this. Why don't you remind yourself before you try and present it as evidence? You might not have fucked it up so bad when misrepresenting it.
Yep.
The one idea that they came up with was essentially, and I remember reading this about her, I think it was Smithsonian Magazine, and it was put forth as some triumphant article. It ended up making the whole thing look really stupid, which is common in these magazines. But anyway, she basically found this ability, or this potentiality, that something like iron deposits in the soil and the waters that were around these things could, in theory, throw off the dating techniques, and they could be much older than they actually manifest themselves.
It's talking such hogwash.
That's amazing. That
just complete misrepresentation, right? Look,
woefully misrepresenting what happened.
First, it's not iron in the ground, it's iron in the blood.
Yeah.
Okay. Second, it didn't throw off dating. It didn't throw off dating. It just preserved tissue. Okay. You know what? I actually think that what we're witnessing here is a worse misrepresentation than what Matt Powell achieved. Worse.
Which I didn't think that was possible.
No.
But, as always, we do have to update our views with new information.
The old model's gone. Science is in session.
That actually doesn't disprove what she found, because it still doesn't show us, that's fine, I mean, that's fine, your dating is off, but it doesn't show to us how you could somehow have organic tissue that would survive millions and millions and millions of years, when that doesn't make sense with the narrative about how carbon life forms are supposed to have half-lives and all that sort of thing.
This guy knows nothing about what he's talking about. Nothing at all.
Another way that they sort of tried to disprove this as well is there were some other researchers at another university where essentially they proved, according to themselves, that you could actually do carbon dating back tens of millions of years.
No! Please stop talking so much crap.
And so confidently.
It's amazing.
So factually. What nonsense. Look, carbon dating does not work on dating things that are millions of years old.
No.
It doesn't work. You have to use other radiometric dating methods.
We've been using them for over a century.
Yep. Over a century.
How can he so confidently talk about things? He's not even read the wiki page.
Well,
ever.
It's called proselytizing. Lying for Jesus.
Well, here's the problem. On the one hand, you basically have you're throwing out objections to the entire corpus of dating that they have, which apparently could be corrupted by these iron deposits supposedly in the soil and the environment. And on the other hand, you have these people blowing the roof off of what they previously thought about carbon dating. So in order to fix this problem that goes against the narrative, they create two new problems that go against the narrative, which creates a hydra of 70,000 more problems that ends up calling the theory into question even more. This is a problem for evolution. There's also other interesting animals, inconvenient truths, that is, these animals. There's something called the coelacanth, if I'm pronouncing that right, fish. Apparently this fish survived the great extinction event of what happened supposedly 60 to 80 million years ago, but this fish has not changed its structure whatsoever, even though we're supposed to think that evolution is something that continually happens.
Somebody please stop this man.
What absolute drivel. We're going to have to consider rejigging the format of our entire series here, our entire channel, because what we do is we play out like the claims that they make, but this is just drivel.
Yeah, normally there's something in there for us to respond to.
This is Ray
to talk
rambling.
About. This is worse.
Unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
It's like an awkward drunk uncle that thinks he understands the world, but is actually hopelessly ignorant.
Yep.
They tell us, for example, that 100,000 years is enough in human ancestors to have major leaps in cognitive ability and structure. But for some reason, we have this 80 million year old fish that hasn't changed in 80 million years. How does that make sense?
It's just wrong.
It's just wrong, yep. Look, the coelacanth is an order of fish that has 2 living species.
Yeah.
And they absolutely have changed. Mm-hmm. However, they're still like so close to their ancestors that they are within the same taxonomic group.
Yeah. They have so few predators in their parts of the ocean that natural selection it's not driving any significant change to their morphology.
Yeah.
It's just like with crocodiles, the fact that they haven't changed much just simply means, evolutionary speaking, they're very successful.
But for some reason, we have this 80 million year old fish that hasn't changed in 80 million years. How does that make sense?
It's a 400 million year old order, not
so
80.
He's only out by a little bit then with 80.
Only a little bit. And the species that are alive today absolutely have changed, but we haven't seen significant divergence in order to justify different classification.
No. And as much as he says it, this length of time isn't impossible. It just means they're successful. Us humans have had far greater evolutionary pressure to change than this fish has. That's all it is. It only doesn't make sense if you're completely ignorant of evolutionary principles. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Why is it not still evolving? You also have the lungfish. Because you have to remember, this idea of evolution is essentially you have the survival of the fittest, so these things are supposed to make sense for survival and thriving of a species. Look up the lungfish. I won't bore you with it too much right here.
All right, we'll look it up.
Because I bet he hasn't.
Look up the lungfish. It basically turns itself into mud somehow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, he definitely didn't look it up.
He definitely did not look it up. Unbelievable. Okay.
And stops breathing and has a heartbeat every few weeks or months.
What a stupid thing to say. Just, okay. Let's go.
It basically turns itself into mud somehow and stops breathing and has a heartbeat every few weeks or months for a time. Might be a series of days. The point is, it doesn't fit reality. And then at a certain point, it sort of gets rehydrated and goes back into the water when these rising levels of water in these hot places in Africa.
He's almost looked it up, but it's kind of amazing how wrong he's got a lot of that, right?
Right, and what a surprise, okay. The African lungfish does not turn to mud.
No, like anyone watching would have believed that a fish can become mud. Mm-hmm. To begin with, okay, the lungfish, as the name is going to suggest you, it has a lung, which requires it to surface above the water to take in oxygen, because their gills don't work, okay? Now, when the water in the lakes gets low in the summer, it doesn't die from being unable to breathe like most fish would. They essentially burrow down into the mud and then spew a mucus surrounding itself like a cocoon. And it enters estivation, which estivation is kind of like hibernation, but it's in the summer rather than the winter. And it can remain in this state for months, digesting the muscle in its tail for energy. Now, most creatures, when they enter hibernation, they digest fat, but this fish does the muscle in its tail. This is then something that we witness in loads of species. It's not weird, it's not unusual, and the process at this point is pretty well understood. Please, please, please stop saying it doesn't make any sense. We know how it makes sense. We know how it works.
Right, while we're on the topic, the research that he got us to do. Okay.
Yeah.
The Australian lungfish, is the only species of lungfish that can breathe through its gills without needing air from its lungs.
Yeah. It's all of the other species, the gills are too atrophied for it to breathe.
Thanks, God. Thanks. But yeah, this is like the only instance I can think of. Well, there's probably more. But we finally have an instance, well done Australia, where you have a creature that's a little bit more normal than the rest of the world. Yeah.
We need to look a bit more into it, because it must be one of the most deadly animals alive.
It's going to have some
It's in Australia, it has to be.
It will. It will shoot web or some stupid nonsense. That's true.
How does that make any sense evolutionarily? Are you telling me that these fish decided to essentially, I don't know, go sunbathing for a while, and they covered themselves in mud and just decided not to go back in the water and did it for so long, and there was trial and error for, I don't know, 50 million years, and eventually got to the point where they evolved to have a heartbeat every 6 weeks? And I mean, you follow it through and it's just absurd.
When you put it like that, it sounds absurd. Because that's not what happened. That's not what happened.
I hate these representations you get from creationists where they go, oh, did the creature just suddenly decide it was going to do this thing? Like, oh, did this fish just suddenly decide it was going to stay above ground?
Yeah.
No, of course that's not what it did.
Oh. Look, so the lungfish changed as its environment changed. So those lungfish wouldn't have been lungfish at the time, unlikely, but those specimen who could survive in lower amounts of water had a survivability advantage.
Yeah.
Because those that couldn't survive with lower water, natural selection picked them out. And then if you have this arms race, this co-evolution, if you will, between the water getting lower or the environment changing in such a way as to require the fish to be able to breathe on land, then you're going to have a selection that pushes towards the lungfish. It's not...
It doesn't just happen like that overnight.
Yeah.
And then the fish deciding, oh, I want to breathe.
Yeah, it goes over thousands, if not millions of years. It's like the depiction that creationists like Kennedy have of evolution are so grotesquely false that I really do struggle to think that they could be not doing this deliberately.
Oh, I know what you mean, yeah.
Just absurd. It's like, at least when we deal with, say, Christianity, we might make the odd joke here about it being a lich that's resurrected, right?
Yeah.
But we take it seriously. Like, we actually deal with the literature by, being charitable and still manning it. Creationists seem utterly, utterly incapable of doing this. Like, their charitability. It's always funny that those fundamental Christians come across as just so aggressively obnoxious.
And camels also fit this as well.
Leave the camel alone.
Camels go weeks or long periods of time without drinking water. No animal would ever do that voluntarily.
Oh my word, it's not about them volunteering to do that. Bats hang upside down. No one would volunteer to do that. Do you see how absurd what you're trying to say sounds? It's because it's not how it happens. This is just getting stupid now.
Watch what happens to animals. If their environment is out of resources, they migrate and go somewhere else.
Some do, whereas others adapt to the environment, especially if the environment changes very slowly.
So for some reason, the camel, I guess maybe the camel is very stubborn, apparently, according to evolutionists, and it decided to go just further out into the desert until it got really thirsty, push a little bit further, and go back and get a bunch of water. And they decided to do that consciously, for generations? Go look at a camel in a zoo, and you will go, this thing is insane.
This guy's been wound up, hasn't he? Like, he started off as, quite frankly, nuts. And he's just getting worse.
I'm going to be insane by the end of this.
He's deteriorating worse.
Another Matt Powellism.
Oh, yes.
Honestly, I don't even know where to begin with deconstructing what he just said there. It was all nonsense.
It's not that camels decided to push further into the desert for shits and giggles, as he's just made out, okay? They're stubborn. No, the way that he thinks of evolution is like a cartoon, okay? He thinks that some camels, they just started testing how long they could go without water while telling the other camels not to reproduce. Like, these are the cartoons, the characters that they hold. It's very uncharitable.
Well, he's trying to suggest that if I was to try and hold my breath for as long as possible, then my children would inherit the ability to not need to breathe.
Yes. Yeah, he has
That's
that.
what he's trying to almost suggest happens, but obviously that's not how it works. It all depends on the environment, the selection forces in play.
Yeah, and like as there was a selection towards there being less water in the deserts, the mammals had to either, as he said, go to a new environment or adapt to that environment, and that's what the camel did.
Yeah, and the ones then that could live on smaller amounts of water could then reproduce.
Yeah,
it's really not difficult. The desert didn't always exist.
No, I'm finding this guy quite frustrating.
Very.
Like, for some reason, this guy is annoying me more than Powell.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
There is no way that this happened through a series of trial and error. An animal like the camel would be extinct. Because what we see in lived reality with animals is that when their environment gets bad, the animals do go extinct or they go somewhere else and adapt to that new environment that they can thrive in. They don't stay in the one that kills them. That's not what happens in the basic instincts of animals.
Or they adapt to their environment as it changes.
Hang on a minute. Because if they can go and adapt to a new environment, why can he not believe that they can adapt to the one that's changing around them?
He's accepting evolution and not accepting evolution, yeah.
The last point, we're going to call this the missing link.
Oh, no.
No, indeed.
Oh, my goodness.
My favorite author, G.K. Chesterton, he said, the only thing we know about the missing link is that it is, in fact, missing.
Why has no one found the missing link between modern humans and ancient apes?
We did find it. It's called Homo erectus.
We're going to call this the missing link.
Then you have proven my case, sir. For no one has found the link between apes and this Homo erectus.
Yes, they have. It's called Homo habilis.
We're going to call this the missing link.
Fair enough. But where, then, is the missing link between apes and this Darwinius macilli?
Fun little wit there. But the missing link is this idea that you're going to have these aha smoking gun moments where you find in the so-called fossil record evidence of something that proves your point. Well, this is actually sort of a logical fallacy.
Wait. So, predicting that you'll find something if your theory is true is a logical fallacy.
No, Kennedy. That's called science.
Because what you're saying with this whole mentality, we're going to get into the fraudulent nature of these so-called missing links, but this logical fallacy, we see this with the idea of the missing link.
Name the fallacy, because it isn't one.
Because what you're doing is sort of the opposite of how you should be reasoning towards a conclusion. You're going in with the mentality, if you're one of these evolutionary archaeologists, whatever, you're going in with the mentality that you believe there must be a missing link.
No, if evolution is correct, we'd expect to see transitional fossils, and that is precisely what we see.
Yeah, how science does it is we make a hypothesis, we go, right, well, if this is true, we'd likely find this. So let's test to see if we can find this. Oh, we did find this. Well, then that must confirm our idea.
Yeah, and it's like, let's just say that
if you never found it, you'd either sit there and go, either this doesn't work, or we're still missing the data to confirm it.
And even better, if you found a bit of observation that contradicted your hypothesis, that's gone.
To make your theory work. So you apply that presupposition to what you find as evidence of what you've already concluded.
No, that's not presupposing anything. That's an expectation, a prediction, which can be proved wrong if the theory is false.
Yeah, and again, as we were saying earlier, if the scientific consensus is proved wrong, then the theories will be changed to fit the new data, as happened with Mary Schweitzer, where they found that new preservation process. Okay, we want to accurately represent our world, so we need a way to test the ideas we're coming up with. And prediction, that's where prediction comes into it.
Yeah, and like with with prediction, right? A good example relating to evolution is that since cetaceans are mammals, evolution predicts that we're fine transitional species like Pakicetus and Durodon. And we have. Like, the evidence for cetacean evolution is really quite clear. Also, when when we were able to get the genomes of species, one thing, what did evolution predict? Probably because cetaceans are mammals, we'll find that whales have much more in common with us, say, humans, than they do sharks. And they do.
Yeah.
Like, there's a prediction made by evolution. What if that didn't turn out to be that way? Well, it would be a problem for evolution. It would be a problem.
It'd be a problem for evolution in the exact same way that our observations of the expanding universe was a problem for the Big Crunch idea.
Absolutely.
So what we did...
And the steady state.
Got rid of it. Steady state.
Got rid of it.
If it doesn't work,
Yeah.
we get rid of it. And we do it all the time.
Yeah, it's just you got to find a way to make sense of the observations. And if you can't make sense of the observations, then it's discarded. Can you name one time creationists did this?
No.
That is not good reasoning. If you're truly being scientific, you should say, I should be doing everything I can to discredit what I find, so that if it still passes the test, I'll know that it's actually true.
And that's exactly what predictions are for.
Yep, absolutely. As the biologist John Haldane once said, all that is required to destroy his confidence in evolution would be to find a rabbit fossil in the Precambrian. That's it. That would do it.
There's thousands of potential finds that would destroy evolution.
Yeah.
The fact that we never find them is a pretty good testament to its formidable strength.
Yeah, and I mean, this goes back to what we were saying before. All of these different fields have just an endless number of ways of how they could contradict evolution by natural selection. Endless. None of them turn up. None. It just doesn't turn up, and it hasn't for centuries. Like centuries of hard work in all of these fields, and there is no rabbit that's turned up in the Precambrian. That's amazing, right? Evolution is something we should be proud of to know. It's like the pinnacle of human knowledge.
But
because it doesn't fit the narrative
at this point.
Yeah, because it doesn't fit the narrative of creationists, they just reject it. They misrepresent it incessantly.
The missing link is a fraudulent philosophical and logical outlook from the beginning and shouldn't be taken seriously. But if we actually look into the so-called missing links, these major hominids so-called that have been found, we find a ton of fraud.
No, as is the case with every field, we find mistakes.
Yeah.
There was one instance, actually. There is a fraud that was
one
within
that
evolution.
Creationists keep bringing up.
Yeah, and keep
over and over again.
And ignore the fact that it was exposed by
scientists
that believe in evolution, right? But no, the idea that there's many frauds is stupid.
For example, Piltdown Man from England. This was found, over 100 years ago or so. It was actually a fraudulent skull. I believe it was mixed with bones from a chimpanzee. They even did things like, add some sort of stain or painting to it and sanding it down to create some sort of Piltdown Man. Well, as you can imagine, the scientists were so happy about this that it turned into this whole idea, and they were recreating entire scenes and the rest of the skeleton from just ahead and so forth, and it was a disaster. It was turned out to be a fraud, which you can find in the mainstream literature.
The funny thing is that the fact that he acknowledges it was revealed as a fraud only strengthens our position. It was scientists themselves who discovered and exposed this hoax and removed it from their studies and research, and then they strengthened their methods to weed out future forgeries. So this only benefits us.
Yeah, you can't use the mistake of scientists, being convinced of a fraud as proof that
which was corrected.
Yeah, which was corrected as proof that science doesn't work.
No.
Right? You just can't do this. The correction itself demonstrates that science does work.
Whereas the Catholic Church still can't correct that, condoms don't cause AIDS.
There was also Peking Man from Peking, China, which is a big fraud as well. Somehow the bones just went missing about 50, 60 years ago, and we've never seen them since, which doesn't happen with things like this.
What do you mean this just doesn't happen? I mean, the specimens, right? They were being transferred in 1941, and do you know what else was happening in 1941?
Oh, there was a big war or something. I've heard something about it.
Yeah, World War II.
World War II.
And within it, Japanese and German navies were attacking merchant ships, and one of the ships they attacked was the one that was carrying Peking Man. Yeah.
And that ship, it's never been found, has it?
No.
So a ship was attacked, sunk, and not found after. Do you know how many ships have been sunk and not found?
Are they all frauds? Are they all frauds?
There's loads of ships that this has happened to.
And there's plenty of ideas of what happened to the remains. Okay, like I guess the most obvious and straight up is that it's at the bottom of the sea. Or it's been ground. It's been ground by the sea. But that's the other one, that it's been ground for Chinese medicine. Yeah,
okay, locals found it and then used it in medicine. Can you just imagine? That's
entirely possible.
Such a weird thing.
It is very weird.
We'll have to talk about that one day.
We will. But again, this doesn't make it a hoax. Like he's just saying there's several hoax.
And one of the men who was on this research team was actually Teilhard de Chardin, who was an arch heretic in the church and a probably demon-possessed priest. And one of the men who was on this research team was actually Teilhard de Chardin, who was an arch heretic in the church and a probably demon-possessed priest who spread heresies all throughout and tried to have evolution even be applied to the reality of the human soul.
Well, he did a very good job of that, because most Christians today believe in evolution. And even the Catholic Church won't outright deny it anymore.
That's true. They're still on it with the condom stuff. But not with that bit. These people have become more scientifically informed, not more demon possessed. Also, as many Christians believe, such as Mary Schweitzer, evolution makes God bigger. That's what she says. She believes that evolution is compatible with theism and makes God greater.
Very specious beginning. Nebraska man. Nebraska man was not a man. Nebraska man was a tooth. They found a single tooth, and from there, decided that it has to belong. I mean, I'm serious. Forgive me for being a little bit simplistic here. But are you a serious person? Are you a serious person if you find a tooth and you assume that you found a new species? I'm actually wondering that.
Yes, if you discover a tooth and it resembles no other tooth of any extant species or extinct species, then what do you have? Well, if you can identify it as a tooth, then it's got to be to a new species.
Are you a serious person if you find a tooth and you say to yourself, I not only found a tooth, I'm going to recreate a jaw, and then I'm going to recreate a skull, and then I'm going to recreate a skeleton, and then I'm going to publish that in newspapers, which is what happened.
That's not what happened.
No.
It's not what happened.
That's not what happened at all.
No.
They didn't try to recreate an entire skeleton. The scientists actually involved, or the one that found the tooth at least, they attempted to identify it and concluded that it belonged to an anthropoid ape. They were wrong, okay? It's fine, mistakes happen. But months after they published their paper, another newspaper picked up this find, and they their imagination ran wild, and they started making illustrations that were even described by the lead scientist involved, Dr. Henry Osborne, as a figment of the imagination of no scientific value and undoubtedly inaccurate.
Yeah.
So even he didn't believe their drawing.
Furthermore, outside of Dr. Osborne and his team, the entire scientific community almost immediately looked at the specimen with, let's say, incredulity.
Yeah, and Osborne himself actually retracted the hypothesis, so he was fine with admitting the mistake.
Yeah, this was a mistake, not a hoax.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Rather than demonstrating the failure of science, it again illustrates the success of science.
Yeah, their commitment to truth.
Yeah.
By making a correction according to their evidence. So, if it shows any failure at all, it shows how the press, how the newspapers, they can just let the truth get away in favour of a story.
Yeah.
That's worst case scenario, what this demonstrates.
You are not a serious person if you do that, and I can't take you seriously. I apologize.
And we can't take you seriously because you don't know anything.
And we don't apologise.
Nebraska man was actually the tooth of a pig.
All you've demonstrated is a scientist's willingness to admit that he was wrong and adjust his views accordingly.
Which is the bedrock of science.
Yeah, so you present this as if it's a hoax, which it's not, and actually what you've done is demonstrated that these scientists have integrity.
Don't throw pearls before swine is a saying from Christ that I think just came to mind. There are more frauds as well. And the last one we'll talk about real quickly here. You've heard of Lucy?
Lucy is not a fraud.
You can't just call it a fraud because you don't like it.
Yeah, the Kennedy report, where we call everything a fraud that we don't like.
Lucy was this supposed hominid found in South Africa in the 1970s or so. And I believe Lucy was named after the Beatles song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, finally. He got something right. He got something right.
He stated a correct fact. It's only taken him 20 minutes of his video and detours into misrepresenting the Big Bang to get there. Mm-hmm. But we got something truthful.
Well, they tried to prove that Lucy was some sort of in-between creature. They found something that looked like a small ape. And the researchers were so convinced that they knew how Lucy was supposed to stand that they actually ended up drilling into her hips and making her stand up straight, because they said that's how she actually would have, but her fossils were distorted by the process over these hundreds of thousands of years.
Right, so we found over 300 individuals of Afarensis, not just Lucy, exactly, and we know that Afarensis walked up straight. Okay, we know this because of their pelvis shape, their knee joints, structures of their neck, and their heel bone, which have the same adaptations as modern humans. It's really interesting.
And we have further evidence with the Liatoli footprints, which, by the way, it's the Liatoli footprints and not the Liatoli foot and handprints, okay? So these indicate bipedal water kings.
Yeah.
And then fossil bones of Australopithecus afarensis have been found near these footprints, also dating back to about 3.6 million years ago, which that's the same time that these footprints were made. Yeah. So a bit of corroborating evidence and...
Yeah, I mean, like, also... Okay, bit pedantic on my part, fair enough, but Kennedy said hips, plural, but we only found one of Lucy's hip.
Yeah.
Okay, you'd think he'd want to, like, go, she is a fraud, the other part's missing. Look, and when he says that we drilled into her hips, we frankly don't know what he means, because when you Google Lucy and drilling, or Australopithecus afarensis hip drilling, nothing comes up. And he, as always, doesn't provide any source. He's just getting it from the top of his head, you know, from that time where he destroyed the textbook writers.
Given a little bit of leeway here, I'm assuming what he means is that when they were pinning her together for display, that's when they drilled into the hips, and he's saying that they did it wrong.
He must be saying, but I don't know what he's saying. I don't know what he's saying.
Well, that's what I think he's saying. He's essentially saying she shouldn't have been standing upright, but when they pinned her to display her, that's what they did. But as you said, we have reasons to believe they walked upright.
So again, these scientists knew much better than everyone else.
They know better than you.
Most certainly.
And they were able to tell us what actually happened, even though they never saw it happen.
Oh my God, we don't need to see everything that happened. Hang on, sorry. Christians do this all the time. They claim that they know Jesus resurrected, even though they never saw it. So... Yeah. Sorry, Kennedy, what's the deal here? Can you infer information or not? Yeah. Because you never saw Jesus resurrect, so how can you claim that it happened?
Also, Reese, how do you know that this house was made, even though you wasn't there to witness it being made?
I live in it.
I'm suspicious.
Last thing I'll say about this sort of missing link, there's actually such a small amount of the actual bones of the supposed hominids that I believe you can actually, and I'm not talking about all fossils, I'm talking about a small amount of the actual hominid fossils, so-called, that you can actually fit them in the back of a medium to large size pickup truck.
We have found over 6,000 hominid individuals, so that must be a pretty cramped pickup, right? Yeah. And remember, fossilization is rare. We only have, I think it's 32 T-Rex fossils. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure more than 32 T-Rexes ever existed.
Yep, it's a good example, but I mean, you only need one. Lucy is enough on her own to really, really cause problems for creationism. And I think that creationists hate Lucy because when they look at her bones, they are forced to recognize the folly of creationism. They hate this stuff. They need to call it a fraud. Because it so undermines their worldview.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to. Again, most Christians accept evolution. Like, You don't need to be like Kennedy here and just misrepresent what we understand, and
Just
treat
please.
your flock like mushrooms and keep them in the dark and feed them crap.
I have much more respect for someone that
Yeah.
says God flicked the stone that set the Big Bang in motion, or
Yeah,
set evolution in motion, than someone who will outright deny the universe, the world that we actually have, and the facts that we have that support our theories.
Yep.
So think about the human species, for example, and how many graveyards there are around the world, how many bones you can find in places like where major battles have taken place. Hundreds of millions.
How many of those hundreds of millions of bones from recent battlefields are fossilized?
Mm-hmm.
None, because the process takes thousands of years. Thousands.
Yeah.
And it depends on the location, the minerals available, whether it was buried. There's so many factors that come into it.
And it turns out, if you bury a specimen 6 feet under,
Yep.
then you really ruin a scavenger's party.
Well, yeah, because if scavengers are not consuming the flesh, tearing the bones apart, moving them to different locations,
Exactly.
well, then they're going to last longer.
Yeah.
They're going to be there and able to mineralize.
Exactly. I would bet if the Tyrannosaurus Rex buried its kin, okay,
We'd have more than 32.
we'd have more than 32, especially if they buried it in what is equivalent in their size to 6 foot for us. 6 dinosaur feet under. Yeah, we're gonna have a few more than 32, likely.
Humans in the future, thousands of years from now, they will have far more fossils than we have now. Because early hominids don't have, or didn't rather, have the same conceptions about burying their dead that we do today.
They have more fossils of us than what
we have of everything prior.
Yeah.
Now, I know some of them would decay, but obviously some of them would be fossilized. But from all of that time, hundreds of millions of years of various animalistic evolutions, hundreds of thousands of years of these various hominid-related evolutions, there would have had to have been a large percentage of them to survive the randomness. Remember, this is random. So if you have 1 million, one of them makes it through. So you would have had to have a huge amount of these creatures. And we can find evidence of enough to fit in a car. Call me crazy, but I'm not buying it.
You're not buying it because you don't understand any of it.
He's such a frustrating person.
They need to have been rapidly buried. If they were eaten by scavengers or otherwise left to decay in the open, they wouldn't have become fossilized. The reason the process is rare is because not that many creatures get buried. One of the best places we've ever found fossils is the tar pits. I can't remember where they are, but tar pits, because nothing could get in there to eat them.
And it's like, with fossilization being so rare, I tell you a group of people that would know this. It would be those that write the textbooks. They would know it. So I wonder how they dealt with Kennedy walking in with his sheer arrogance and utter ignorance. I mean, what changed their mind? What changed those popes' minds? You know what? Just don't tell me.
Call me crazy, but I'm not buying it. So,
Did he just fart?
I think he just squeezed a little one out there.
Just out.
Sorry, we're not children.
No.
Serious face.
But you have to do something to be able to tolerate this nonsense.
call me crazy, but I'm not buying it. So, these are 5 points to debunk or destroy this specious theory of evolutionary theory.
No, this has been 5 instances of complete and utter ignorance wrapped in pretentious, condescending arrogance.
And yeah, only 3 of those 5 points actually had anything to do with evolution as
Yes,
well.
true.
So it's pretty terrible all around.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap this bad boy up because this has been a long one.
Actually, before we do wrap it up, do you think this video was worse than the Matt Powell one?
I'd say that Kennedy scored lower in literacy, but the same in arrogance. Maybe even also lower in arrogance.
So lower in literacy, lower. Okay, so he's about on par then, really.
This guy is a piece of work.
I think that this was worse.
What?
Because
is the king been dethroned?
I think that this was worse because Matt Powell, while it was unintentional, he at least made me laugh at his terrible straw man.
That is true. He's funny. Yeah.
This guy had nothing going for him.
No. Okay, I can understand. Oh, well, let us know what you think in the comments because I think they're close.
I think they're close.
Yeah.
But we definitely had to take more time. To
Yeah,
deal with
I'm
this
sure
guy.
it shows. This guy annoyed me more than Matt.
Yeah.
But I don't know why. All right, so wrap up time.
Wrap up time.
Here it is.
Thank you
Reese,
for making it.
he's got a
all
channel.
the way through.
Yeah, thanks for making it all the way through. He's got a channel on history. Check it
I'm
out if you
actually-
want. If you don't want to, don't worry about it.
I'm actually. You're
Yeah.
giving your. We didn't do your terrible intros. You're giving me a terrible outro.
Nah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But on that front, on the channel front, I do want to say actually thank you very, very much for everyone that has come over to check my channel out, because thanks to all of you, I have now broken 1,000 subscribers, which is obviously a big milestone for someone who's trying to get their channel going. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. You've left me such wonderful comments as well. Really appreciate it.
Dude, he was a absolute basket case.
Absolutely.
That was awful. Like, what an awful individual. What the hell?